Hi, folks. I'm very happy today to share a program I recorded last night with Jeff Rents on the Jeff Rents Show on the Rents Radio Network. So hope you enjoy it. It's about the one factor that you can't escape, but you must confront.
All right. First up tonight is Dr. Дэвид Дюк, who is with us once a month. David holding forth on this network every day on his own program, which has a huge following, and he has contributed mightily to our cause over the years. Hello, David. Welcome back.
Well, hello, Jeff. It's great to be with you, my friend.
David knows Ukraine better than any other American citizen, except for a few in the intel business.
I lived there
could
a
know.
couple of years and went to university
Yeah.
there, the largest university in Ukraine, when I got my doctorate. Spoke all
Yeah.
over the country, and I do feel like I know the country as I know Russia. I lived in Moscow 5 years, even worked with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, for those listening
That's
that
amazing.
haven't heard me before.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So here's the deal. We've got somebody with a perspective who lives here, who was there. And Russell Bentley is the other one that I know who is over there, who used to live here. So, David, what's your call on this? I don't need a dissertation, but where are we going with this? I don't see. Today I got another report that more land is being, if the word is recaptured, if that's it, it's being taken by the Ukraine military, armed and supplied logistically by NATO, i.e. the U.S. So if they're taking more land that Putin is still trying to formally, finally certify as being part of the Russian Federation, what does this mean? What's he going to do?
I think it's a distorted Jewish media narrative because,
Okay.
and this has been going on since the war began. Russia came in, the whole war. And by the way, just to make it clear, and we should start off just talking about the truth. We've both talked, and you've had so many people on your program who've talked over the years. Over the years of your program, we had, for instance, the Iraq War. We had two Iraq wars. We had what went on in Syria. We had what went on with the crimes of Israel against the Palestinian peoples. We've had the attack on the nation of Yugoslavia. It was Yugoslavia, then now it's Serbia, where they actually supported a creation of an independent Muslim state, Kosovo, right in the heart of their country, because they said the people wanted to do that and they had the right to secede. And to go against the Christian majority of Serbia, of Yugoslavia, they literally attacked the city of Belgrade and killed many civilians and had a NATO war against another European country because they wanted to keep their country together. And what's going on in Ukraine from the very beginning has been lies, 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 and more lies from the same people who brought us the Iraq War, a war based on lies, a war that was created by these so-called Jewish neocons. It's not just neocons, it's also you might say it's neo-commies or neo-libs. And even what's called neocons in America, the original neocons were started by Leo Strauss, and all of the original neocons that decided they'd try to take over the Republican Party because they already controlled a lot of the left of the Democratic Party as communists. They decided to switch their allegiance, so to speak, and become so-called neoconservatives, but these were all original Trotskyite communists. And Trotskyite communists, by the way, have been hating Russia ever since Stalin basically turned against the Zionists in the country, made Zionism a criminal act, by the way, in what was the Soviet Union. And Russians very gradually gained control back over their country from the Jewish communists that killed millions and millions of Russians, as well as millions and millions of Ukrainians. And of course, they gave us the Iraq War, a war based on lies. There were no weapons of mass destruction. I traveled the country, I traveled the world, in fact, speaking against this war. And most people recognize this. I mean, the evidence is so obvious about it, but what's so amazing about this whole process with Ukraine right now, this is just a replay of all that. The same so-called neoconservatives that led us into the Iraq War, which cost us trillions of dollars, as well as the Afghanistan war, are the same ones who are now leading us into a possible nuclear war or a world war, which could end all European life on the planet, plus much of the rest of the planet as well, because there's no coming back from a truly all-out nuclear war. But there's a way that these wars can get going, and you can't stop them. And we've seen that in the First World War. We've seen that in the Second World War. And this is a real threat to humanity right now. Now, the latest incident, as you know, is the pipeline bombing. Terrorism is what it was. And to show you exactly how powerful these people are and how insane they are and how much they control our media, it's just like the Hunter Biden laptop. They announced to the American public that, oh no, this was Russian disinformation. This was Russian election interference. Don't believe it. It's the Russians that are doing it. It's those damn evil Russians that are doing it. The New York Times told us that. The Washington Post told us that. ABC told us that. NBC told us that. Facebook told us that. The FBI told Facebook that this was all just a Russian lie. Yet these publications had to know it. They never investigated. They never looked into it. This was, in fact, Jewish disinformation. This was Jewish interference in our election. And by the way, they all support this insane war against Russia. And it's really
they're making a fortune on it.
Yeah, and it's really a war against, it's a war against Ukraine. And Ukrainian television on their mass television, which is Jewish controlled. Ukraine has a Jewish prime minister. It has a Jewish president, Zelensky. It's got a Jewish head of the Defense Department. Right? It's got both of the major national television networks, all of those have been kind of dismissed, are Jews. It's completely Jewish controlled country. And yet they have some of these Jews who are supposed to be, against the war in Ukraine, who tell us that Ukraine is a Nazi country. Well, I know who runs Ukraine, and it's not Nazis. And maybe there are some people who call themselves Nazis or put on a swastika or some sort of baloney.
Hey, David, hold on. You're doing great.
Yeah.
I've got to say this. We really need to make people understand and help them understand that there is a tremendous reversal of semantics and word meaning here. The government of Ukraine is Zionist, Bolshevik, communist. It is not a Nazi regime.
Right.
Period.
Exactly.
No. It's
not
joke.
a Nazi regime. It is a Jewish regime. These people are all Jews. The only thing they talk about is Baba Yar, where these supposedly some Jews were machine gunned in the Second World War. They never talk about the Holodomor, the murder of 11 to 13 or 14 million Ukrainian,
Millions.
And the Jews who killed the mass murderers in Russia. That's one of the things that Solzhenitsyn documented for me better than I had a lot of documents before I even met him. But it's so true. There's a whole book he wrote called 200 Years Together. And I joked with him about that. And I told him, I said, the book's titled 200 Years Together. I guess that's the only way you could get it even sold. But maybe you should have entitled it 200 Years at War. Because the whole book is about the war between the Jewish element that came in, these Ashkenazi Jews, which came in, by the way, originally from the Rhineland and then into Eastern Europe and to the Baltic states and into Russia, into Ukraine. And they basically came in there. They took over vast swaths of land. They exploited the people. They criminally used usury and all sorts of loan sharking, all sorts of confidence games.
Yep.
They got people involved in alcohol and alcoholism. They got the intelligentsia involved in gambling, where they could try to destroy them, where they could take over the states, and they ultimately overthrew the Russian Christian Tsar and murdered millions upon millions of Russians. Right now, they're leading America and Europe into war. So now you understand why they didn't make peace with Russia, because the Jewish globalists hate Russia because Putin went against the Jewish oligarchs. Of the 12 out of the 13 top oligarchs that were in power when Putin came into the presidency, of those 12, there's 2 left, right? And they are defanged, right? Now let's talk about the pipelines a minute. Now, they have so much power in media and government that they can put out these lies. Like, so the Europe said, when this was first discovered, and you had these massive amounts of these chemicals bubbling up on the surface of the Baltic, when that first came out, they said, this is definitely an act of sabotage, and this is horrible. This is a great crime. This is an ecological crime. This is a crime against us. This makes it impossible for us to get the Russian gas, which the Russians could turn on for us if we negotiated with us. It made this impossible to get the gas that we needed to keep our industry afloat, our businesses afloat, to feed our families.
Here, let me add something. I postulated, right after the explosion, a day or two after, and I think some of you may remember me saying this, that I felt that somebody, and it probably was Germany, was involved with secret negotiations with Russia to turn the gas back on. And now we know that, in fact, was true. The Germans were talking to the Russians about making a deal to get the gas turned back on so Germans wouldn't freeze to death this winter. That is what triggered the explosions that took out the pipeline.
One of these Zionists who's married to Ann Applebaum, by the way, he did a Twitter feed, and he showed the gas pipeline explosions and the disaster here. And by the way, Russia would not, these 2 pipelines together cost at least $30 billion to create, years of work to do. And these have been destroyed. You can't even just replace them. And he wrote a tweet he later took down because it was too revealing, because he couldn't just help his chutzpah. And he said, "Thank you, USA." So what we had was not, when I say the United States, I'm not indicting the United States. We're a captured country. We're an occupied country. It's as if a foreign power came in and took over our cities, took over our secret services like the CIA, the FBI, took over our government, and are occupying our country. I don't blame the average American for that. Maybe we should have been more cautious. They didn't do it openly. They didn't put an army on our border and take over their country. They subverted us. They took over our media. They corrupted us. They degenerated us. And this act that was done by, and I think it was done by the American government, there's no doubt in my mind, this was not simply an act of war against, Russia and against the people of Ukraine, because they want to keep the war going, right? They don't want negotiations, because the more Ukrainians die and the more Russians that die and the more Americans that have bad economics and have more destroyed jobs and businesses and farms and can't afford to feed their kids, the more that happens, they like it. They just get more powerful, because the rich, they keep still getting richer, these Jews, the oligarchs, and the poor keep getting poorer. The middle class is vanishing in this country, becoming like a third world country. They like it. So this was an act of war against Germany. This was an act of war against France. And even Blinken dared to even say, he said, "We've got to look at this. This is a great opportunity. This is a great opportunity, because we have a really chance to destroy Russia." And they do want to destroy Russia. They want to starve every Russian child. They want to hurt Russia, because they don't like the global homo, opposition that Russia has to it.
That's true. All correct.
And they don't like any challenge to their global hegemony. But what's happened in terms of this pipeline and the lies told to us? This was an act of war against the EU. And I believe every day now, the people of the EU, the blinders are coming out. They're realizing the Jewish control of America, the Jewish control of the EU. This is a Jewish war against Russia and against Ukraine and against Europe and against America. That's what it is.
Well said. You summed it up perfectly.
And again, we will have to say it's not all Jews.
From David was incorrect, fictional, or otherwise out of line. It's just the truth. And there's nothing wrong with the truth. No. Thank you, David. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jeff. I hope it was a meaningful show. Please go to davidduke.com, support our efforts. You can't even use a credit card anymore because that's how Jews stop people from fighting the truth.
It's true. It's the truth. It's just true.
The one thing they can't stand, the one thing that they first repress is anybody that tells you who's really running things.
Okay. All right. David will be back next month. We have a wonderful time speaking and hearing from people of many different persuasions and views. And David is quite a remarkably astute historian. And I've always learned things over the years from him, as have many of you. All right, we will be right back. Hold on.